Russia's escalating its attacks in Ukraine after President Trump put his planned meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin on hold. 6 people, including 2 children, are dead after separate strikes overnight in Kyiv and Zaporizhia. And Russia launched strikes on a kindergarten in Kyiv, but teachers and responders evacuated all 48 children there. Now, President Zelensky says the attacks show Russia doesn't feel enough pressure for dragging out the war. I want to bring in ABC News White House correspondent Karen Travers and ABC News national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy for more on this. So, Mick, how significant are these strikes, and what do you make of the timing?
Well, it's clear that Russia has no intention of stopping this war, Diane. I think that's what they really sent a message here, specifically targeting a school. I mean, that is clearly what they intended to do. These weapons are very accurate. Obviously, this is not a mistake. It's consistent with just about every attack they've had on these population centers over the past few years. So that might be why the White House has decided not to have this Budapest summit. It's just clear that Russia is not interested in a ceasefire. And until they have consequences, which could include the approval of the Tomahawks, they're likely to continue this type of attack and continue the war that they started.
Karen, a Kremlin spokesman says careful preparation is needed before a meeting is set. President Trump already said that he thinks Vladimir Putin may be trying to play him. So at this point, what more preparation is needed?
I mean, Diane, they announced this meeting last week. The president spoke to Vladimir Putin for 2 hours on the phone on Thursday. And afterwards, he put out a post on social media saying that they would meet within the next few weeks. And they even said the location, as Mick Mulroy just noted, in Budapest. And now, just a couple days later, the president is saying it would be a waste of time to have that meeting, and he doesn't want to waste his time. Those comments from the Kremlin that you referenced are very similar to what we heard after the president's summit with President Putin in Alaska when it came to that planning of a meeting with President Zelensky. Remember, President Trump came out of that meeting and said that Putin had assured him he would have a one-on-one meeting with Zelensky. That never happened. Suddenly, the Russians were slow-walking the planning of it, saying it had to be at lower levels first before the two leaders could sit down together. It almost sounds like the same thing here, but this is with President Trump, and he had assurances after that phone call. Again, it's not clear why the Russians would be walking away from this conversation, but the president indicating he doesn't think it's worth it at this point.
Mick, the Kremlin says there's a lot of homework to be done before Trump and Putin meet. What do you think they mean by that homework?
Well, I think they're essentially using it as a delaying tactic. But to be fair, normally the staff of presidents, for example, in this case, would work out a lot of the details so that when they actually had the principles together, there was already an agreed upon solution, or at least a way ahead or something. Normally, it's not all done by the principals. That most principals would not want to go into a meeting with a chance that nothing comes out of it positive, like we saw in the Alaska summit. So I think that's what they're referring to, which is fair when it comes to diplomatic means and methods. But I think they're essentially going to bog everything down in the staff and not move forward. And that's potentially why President Trump wants to bring the leaders together so that they actually have a forcing function.
Karen, a preservation group in the midst of all this is asking the Trump administration to pause construction on the new ballroom. Now, Secretary of State, former First Lady Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, posted on X that it's not his house, it's your house, and he's destroying it. What are you hearing from the White House on that?
The White House is showing no signs of pausing the construction project, Diane, despite that push from the National Trust for Historic Preservation saying that they should pause it while the plans go forward for a potential public review and comment period. I can actually still hear the bulldozers behind me as they're tearing down the walls of the East Wing. The White House says, though, that the East Wing entirely is being modernized in this process. Modernized certainly sounds like demolished based on what we have seen from images over the last 2.5 days and what we can hear behind us. We just learned, too, from the White House that the First Lady's offices, which are housed in the East Wing, have been relocated. They're elsewhere on the complex in the White House and in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, which is just right next door here to the White House complex. But they were in the East Wing, so right now nobody can work out of there as this process plays out. But Diane, the White House is certainly indicating no slowing down of this, despite despite some of the criticism they're facing for the project itself and how it's happening right now, especially during the government shutdown.
All right, Karen Travers, Mick Mulroy, thank you.